Hey guys, welcome back. Today we're gonna make some homemade bread. Start with 1 tablespoon of yeast, tablespoons vegetable oil, 3/4 tablespoons salt, 2 tablespoons sugar, 6-ish cups of flour, and then 2 1/4 cups of warm water. So you start by putting your yeast over your water and then your sugar over your yeast, and you get that well incorporated. And then today I decided to use instant yeast instead of dry active, so I didn't have to wait around for it to activate or anything. So you add in your vegetable oil. You can use any type of oil, canola oil, vegetable oil, olive oil, it doesn't matter. I've used a couple of different kinds and it turns out fine. And then after that I started on my flour. I put in half of the flour, so about 3 cups of flour. And I just learned that you're supposed to put your flour in your measuring spoon with a spoon. You're supposed to spoon it in like that instead of dipping your measuring spoon in the flour. And apparently it makes it super light and fluffy. I didn't know that. If you dip your measuring spoon in there, it gets too packed. And for bread, you want really light fluffy flour, so I didn't know that, and it worked out pretty well. And then I like to add the salt on top of my flour there to get it well incorporated, because I heard that yeast and salt do not like each other. I don't know. But once you get a really thick paste going on, you have to scrape down the sides often to get it all well incorporated. And then once you get that really thick paste, you can add in your other 3 cups of flour. Now the recipe did tell me to use 5.5 to 6 cups of flour. I did end up using the full 6, but I guess you're just, eyeball it. If it gets too thick, don't use the full 6. It kind of just depends on where you are, I guess, in the world. But once it gets too hard to turn over with a fork, flour up your hands and get your messy hands in there. I like to squish it around, scrape down the sides of the bowl, squish it all together, use a claw-shaped hand, like that, and really mix it all together. I don't have a KitchenAid or anything, so I do have to do it by hand, and that's fine. I just have to work extra hard at getting it all well combined. But scrape down the sides of the bowl, get it all well incorporated. And then once it gets to be a really rough ball, you can lube up your bowl and let it rise. But you want to make sure you get all of that flour well incorporated in there. And I'm using bread flour. I typically use just all-purpose flour, but the store didn't have any, so I went to bread flour. And oh my fluffy bread, it was delicious. I may be converted, because that made it so fluffy. And normally my bread is kind of on the drier side. This is not dry at all. Something, I don't know what protein content it has, but it was so delicious. So I like to spread some butter around on my bowl, get it all nice and lubricated up to make that dough rise in there. And I let it rise for about an hour, and look how fluffy it is. So fluffy. So fluffy. So then I just flour my surface. I don't do a ton of flour because I don't want the dough to get super firm. So just enough so that it doesn't stick. And then once you turn it out, flour the top of it so that your hands don't stick, and then flour your hands just a little bit. I know that's kind of a lot, but it's fine. It did fine. You don't want to do too much that the dough gets too firm, but you want to do enough that it doesn't stick to anything. And it didn't, so it's fine. So once you get it kind of kneaded out a little bit, you can cut it in half. This recipe makes 2 loaves. So you cut it in half, and then you put one to the side, and then I just kind of shape it out into a rough looking rectangle. It doesn't have to be super perfect. And then you rub your butter all over your baking dish and put it at the top so you know kind of how wide to make your rectangle. And then you do it like a letter. So you fold it down in a third, up in a third, and then flip it over and tuck in the ends. And then once you put it in there, you squish it all around to get it all to the 4 corners of it pretty well. And you put that to the side. And I don't have another bread baking dish, so I have to use a baking sheet. And it worked out fine. It was fine. I put butter on it, again, to just keep it from sticking. And I learned this trick a long time ago, to put your hand in a plastic baggie to butter or grease up whatever it is you're greasing up. And then you don't have to like keep washing your hands over and over again. It saves so much time. So you just kind of like flop it on there and you make it into the shape that you want your loaf to be. It's gonna rise again and get like crazy big again, but just kind of the rough shape that you want and however long you want it and stuff. Pack in the sides. I had a few air bubbles to pop. But once you do that, you gotta let it rise for another 30 minutes. And then once it gets risen again, look at the beautiful... I cut some slits in the French loaf type bread, and that helps it like rise in the oven a little bit more, I think. I don't know really what that's for, but I see other people doing it, so I do it. And then in the pan, I don't let it get more than like an inch above the rim of it, because it just gets crazy if you do. And then you put it in a very hot oven, 375 degrees, for about 25 minutes. And here's my secret. You put some ice at the bottom of your fridge. You put some ice at the bottom of your oven, and that helps steam the bread a little bit, and it makes that crust super soft. So anytime that I'm making homemade bread, my family, my kids especially, ask for the garlic herb butter. So I put like a stick of butter in a little jar, and put some garlic, put some basil, put some oregano. Sometimes I use just like straight up Italian seasoning, and it's delicious. So yummy. My kids always are like, "Do you have that garlic butter?" They always ask for it when I make homemade bread. But you put it in it's gotta bake for like 25 minutes, I think. Yeah, 25 minutes. And it comes out. Look at that deliciousness, golden brown yumminess. So once it comes out, slide it off of that parchment paper, get it on that nice cooling rack. Look at that, yummy. So while it's still warm, I do like to brush the top of that French loaf one with that garlic butter. It makes it like shiny and makes that crust really soft, so you don't get like a hard crust on it. And that's what helps the steaming in the oven. That's what helps that too. Helps the crust from not being super hard. So I just brushed the top of it. I didn't brush the loaf pan one because we're going to use it for sandwiches. And I didn't know what kind of sandwiches we would use. Peanut butter jelly probably wouldn't taste good with garlic herb butter. But look at the shininess. It was so delicious. This bread tastes so good. It's like my favorite bread ever. But once I cut into it, I realized, oh my gosh, I gotta use that bread flour all the time. Look how fluffy it is. Yum! But you guys gotta try this. Tag me on Instagram, tag me on Facebook, whatever you gotta do. Let me know if you make this, because it's so yummy. Thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you next time. Bye!